Hey there everybody, it's Mike DiLisio, and today I'm going to be showing you the newest expansion for Endangered, the American Red Wolf scenario. Endangered is a cooperative game where players are trying to protect and defend endangered animals from around the world. And in this particular scenario, we are trying to protect the American red wolf, which is the rarest wolf in the world, currently only existing in the wilds of North Carolina. So let's head over to the table. I'll show you what some of the specific differences are in this particular scenario, and then I'll come back here and let you know what I think. All right, here we have the American Red Wolf scenario for Endangered. I'm not going to be going over the rules for Endangered. We have reviews up for that on the channel, so if you want to get a better idea on how the game plays, you can check that out. But generally speaking, this is a cooperative game where you are trying to fulfill the requirements of whatever particular scenario there is. So let's just talk about the changes in this, the things that are kind of unique to this particular scenario. Number one is, if you see here, the setup is done as it showed on the main board, but column 6 is known as the Alligator River National Wildlife Refuge. And what makes that unique in this scenario is that you can never add or move a tile into that column. It's always going to be this wildlife refuge. All right, we're going to be using these type of tiles in the game, where on one side you have fences, and the other side you have what are known as supportive farms in this scenario. All right, one major difference is that along the top of the board you have the ambassadors like you would have in any game scenario of Endangered, but you also have a new kind of card, which are called the influential group cards. And then during setup, what you're going to do is just shuffle these and randomly place one across the top, over the top I should say, of each one of the ambassador cards. And what these do is they're either going to add influence during voting years or remove influence depending upon whether you have fulfilled the requirements on that group card. This one says there are one or more wolves in column 1. So let's say, for example, that we had something like this happening where we had a mating pair in 1. That would fulfill this, and in the case during a voting year, they would be able to add actually a influence to that. So in this case, this happens to be the Peruvian ambassador, and it says it needs 10 or more. One of those is already fulfilled if we have fulfilled that. If you don't fulfill it, it removes 3 influence. And so there are a number of these different cards that you'll potentially have in the game. You just will look at the bottom, but the benefit and the negative is the same across all of them. Either add 1 or remove 3 influence. Okay? So that is something that's completely new to the American Red Wolf scenario. The other thing that is a bit different is that normally on this relocate action, you move an animal 1 space. All right? In the case of the American Red Wolf scenario, when you take the relocate action, you can either move one animal 1 space, or you can move a mating pair 1 space. So you can do the relocate action and move a pair 1 space if you'd like to. All right? The other thing that's unique to this scenario is that you're never going to remove destruction tiles, which is what the fence side of these tiles essentially are. You're never going to remove them from the board. Instead, whenever it says remove, you're going to flip a fence tile to the supported farm tile side, and when they are like this, the wolves can then pass through them. All right? So that's one thing that is different. When you roll the destruction die during the destruction phase, it's going to go to a row, and if this were a supportive farm, what would happen is it would get flipped to the fence side. If it was not on the supportive side like this, you would add another one to that particular row. All right, and there are only 9 of these tiles that you begin the game with in the supply, so you definitely need to keep track of these because they can very quickly go out of hand, and you'll have to basically try as much as you can to get these onto that side. So at the very least, you're not adding one, you're just flipping one. That's generally the main differences. Obviously, this is going to have its own impact deck as well. That's going to be specific to this. So you've got certain things like an instant impact, lose one wolf that's part of a mating pair, and if you can't do that, you lose 2 wolves. Lose 1 wolf in the Alligator River National Park, which is column 6, Wildlife Refuge, I should say. Lose a wolf outside. Flip a fenced farm that is not in column 5 to supportive, so that's actually a good one. See, you can see some of these are duplicates, as they always are. I want to show you one of the persistent ones here. These are mostly instant. Here we go. Here's some of the persistent. When this card enters play, flip 1 supportive farm to fenced for each active negative movie portrayal in play, including this one. So this one could come out. If another one came out later, you're flipping more. Okay. Other ones, after rolling for destruction, the active player can discard their hand. If at least 3 cards are discarded this way, you ignore the roll and skip that destruction phase. Players may discard this card from play and collectively play 3 million to, pay 3 million to add a mating pair to column 6, and then you ignore the cost of this by 1 for each wolf that's already there. There can only be 4 wolves in column 6. And there's another negative movie portrayal. All right, so that's generally how this one works. The main differences being the influential group, which is new to this scenario, the changes to the relocate, and the fact that you are never removing tiles from the board. You're just flipping them either to the fence side or to the supportive farm side, and having a pretty limited number of tiles that can mess you up. That's one way you can lose. And also, just like normal, if you don't get 4 yes votes from the ambassadors by the second voting year, that's another loss condition. All right, let's head back and I'll let you know what I think. All right, so there you have it, the American Red Wolf scenario, and some of the differences that this particular scenario brings to the table. As I said during the overview, this is coming with an assumption that you kind of know how Endangered works. All right, well, in this scenario, the main distinguishing factors are 2. The influential group cards and the way that the destruction tiles kind of work, which is unique to this particular scenario. The first thing is, let's talk about the influential group cards. I really like those. It's such a simple addition, but it really matters, okay? You've got this swing of potentially 4 influence. What I like about these is that these kind of requirements that they're looking for are not terribly difficult to achieve, because it already can feel very challenging to be able to get yes votes from particular ambassadors. And if you had something that made those strictly more difficult, then they might feel a little punishing. But I never found them to be strictly more difficult. I found that they really kind of lined up to what you're trying to do anyway. And so it might give you some kind of positional things that you're thinking of, maybe think about the placement of particular wolves, but it's not at cross purposes with what you're trying to do. If that were the case, I would feel like, wow, this is just making this already difficult game, in my opinion, more difficult. I really did enjoy them, and I found that more often than not, it was not something that I really had to struggle to get going. If anything, it kind of empowered me as a player to feel like I've got a little bit of help. I've got a little bit of leeway here, because I feel like I can get at least 4 of these influential groups locked down. That's an extra influence toward the particular ambassadors that I'm going for. So again, I really liked that. Simple little change. Doesn't really change the feel of the game, but can really impact those ambassadors, which is what it's all about. That's how you win the game, is by getting yes votes from ambassadors. So a big plus there in my mind. Now, the way that the destruction tiles work, which in this case is a fence on one side or a supportive farm on the other. I like this as well. I like the fact that you're never removing tiles from the board. So your supply is only ever going to go down. And that's the part that I think really I had to kind of adjust myself to, because in the first time I played this scenario, I was doing really well with getting influence on the ambassadors, really well at getting the influential groups locked down. I was feeling very positive about the yes votes, and that is usually not the case when I play Endangered. I'm usually like, gosh, on at least one, maybe two of these votes, I'm going to be stuck rolling dice and hoping that I get a number at or above a particular value. In this particular first game I played, I was feeling really good. But what I did not realize was how much I was letting those tiles get out of control. You can't just leave 3 or 4 rows with a fence tile there, because it means that if you roll any of those rows, you're adding another fence to the board. You're adding another destruction tile to the board. And that was definitely how I lost in the first game. So I had to adjust in later games to try to manage those. So I think this one is a little bit more subtle in how the destruction tile loss can come. At least it was for me. And so it was nice. It was another little twist to the game that made my strategies change quite a bit. So I like that as well. It's not this scenario is not a huge kind of upheaval to the Endangered system, but what it adds I like a lot. I do like the idea that you have the 6 column. It's never going to be, you're never going to be dealing with the destruction tiles in that row. I like how you are starting with this particular small group of wolves at the beginning of the game that are really not going to be able to go anywhere until you start getting some supportive farms in line, and you can start moving them, start positioning those wolves in such a way that they can fulfill the influential groups, things along those lines. And so it really is kind of a neat little twist to it. And it feels particularly devastating when you are losing wolves. And one thing I didn't mention in the overview is that if you have a single wolf on a fence tile at the time that you are doing the destruction, that wolf goes away. If you have a mated pair that happens to be on a fence tile during that phase, then you're going to be losing one of the wolves and moving the other one to an adjacent spot. So it feels much more kind of impactful when you're losing a wolf in this one, because you do not have a lot of wolves to go around, and you do not have a lot of destruction tiles to go around. So that's where this particular scenario, I think, distinguishes itself along with the influential group. So overall, I think that this is a really, really nice scenario. It's one I can easily recommend. I'm going to be giving this a 7.5 out of 10. It's not a huge upheaval to the Endangered game system. You're not going to feel like you're really approaching everything completely differently, but the small tweaks that are there, the small changes that are there that distinguish itself from the other scenarios are very, very good. 7.5 out of 10 for the American Red Wolf scenario of Endangered. All right, that's going to do it for me. This is Mike DiLisio signing off from the Dice Tower Midwest Annex.
Hey everybody, thanks for watching another video from the Dice Tower. Hey, you want to learn more about us, communicate with us? We have a Facebook group, we have a Discord channel, lots of different ways to get involved with the Dice Tower. You can find that in our Linktree link below. So just click that, it will take you and you can communicate with us on Facebook, join our Facebook groups. There's lots of cool things that you can find and become part of the Dice Tower. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Tom Vassell.